there's what people think and then like what you actually do. And one of my favorite emails that I got was like somebody would be like, you know what, after 5 years, I'm starting to think that like you're not just doing this for yourself. And I was just like, my wife would kill you if she read that email. But, because there's a lot of nights away and sacrifices. But I always try to tell myself I am doing this job for Portsmouth, certainly. But I'm also kind of trying to set, like, it's a great way to set an example for my kids.
You're listening to Granite Goodness, the podcast where we interview New Hampshire people making the world a better place.
Oh, Susie, where are you going now?
My name is Andy DeMeo. Today, I'm speaking to Daglin McEachern. Daglin is the 75th mayor of Portsmouth, New Hampshire. He was formerly known as a kid named Daglin with an eye patch. We talk about civic engagement, local politics, traveling the world as a rowing champion, using your privileges to serve others, the difference between being perceived as a politician versus a public servant, what it's like to be a working mayor, building trust in institutions, and a ton of other things on this episode of Granite Goodness. Mayor Daglin McEachern.
Great to be here, Andy.
Welcome to Granite Goodness.
Hey, appreciate you setting all these mics up in the office. For
Yeah.
the listeners at home, you're in the mayor's office.
That's
right
right. I don't know if you remember very clearly the interaction where we met. It was on the street.
Yeah, it was right at TEDx. I was walking down, going to Market Square. I think you were with
My mom.
your mom
Yeah.
walking back, and I think she was the one who said, hey, get it on the podcast.
Yeah, that's pretty much what happened.
All right.
We had been walking around, it was lunchtime, and just on the other street, we were walking, and I saw Chris Pappas. I've never seen him in real life, but I know he's, my congressional representative and all that. So I said to my mom, oh my God, that's Chris Pappas. And he definitely thought I was a crazy person,
I think, Chris, if you recognize any politician, I think right. People are going to put you in a category of, okay, right. Is this person about to yell at me for
right.
something?
Is this positive, or do I need to get my staff over here? Right. Well, I decided not to cross the street. I was just like, hey, Congressman, hello.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
Because I think his staff know who I am because I call his office all the time and leave voicemails. It's positive, though.
Hey, listen, I think politics is like the restaurant business in that nobody really leaves a Google review unless you're like
right.
really motivated.
Yeah.
And sometimes anger's the easier motivator factor. I'm gonna tell them they forgot my kiwi fruit or so right. It's tough to sometimes get the positive interactions, even though everybody, Patrick in his office, they've been doing that work for a lot of years, just great folks. And so when you do reach out with a positive thing,
right.
It's a heartwarming thing, and it's not super hard to do, but it definitely goes a long way because the staff definitely hears it from a bunch of different angles.
Right.
But in this office, in this role, there's a lot of requests that people come with that are federal, just in nature, just like, hey, I have veterans benefits, or I need a passport, and it's not coming through. And the staff and Chris's office has always just been second to none in terms of getting people what they need and helping the government work and constituent service. If that's still a big part of the job. He does a fantastic job of that.
Yeah. Well, that's a little bit what we're here to do on Granite Goodness.
Oh, excellent. Yeah, I guess it's right in the name.
Yeah. Well, it is kind of. I'm really excited to talk to you. I don't think I'd ever met you, but running into you on the street, a little more context for the viewers. I take my mom this is what they want to know. Every year, Portsmouth does a great TEDx.
No, that's right. Yeah.
I've gone for a couple of years. It's always around Mother's Day too. It's like May 10th and whatnot. Yeah. So it's a fantastic Mother's Day thing. If you can get
and we had the weather for it this year.
Yeah,
it was great.
It was killer. So this past one, you were emceeing with the assistant mayor.
Yeah, Joe
Joanna,
Killen.
yeah.
She just got engaged.
Oh,
We'll go to her
congrats.
and Chris.
Right on.
Matrimony
Yeah.
upcoming. But yeah, it was it's a great organization, and since Portland shuttered, the TEDx, we're the largest, I think, outside of Boston and New England.
Yeah.
And it's just a lot of fun to hear. If you're a curious person and if you like, trying to solve problems, it's a great afternoon.
Yeah.
Tough to beat.
Yeah. No, it was. I mean, it's made me look real good to my mom. Let's just say that.
Listen, that's why I'm in this. That's why we all want to do good by our parents and our moms especially.
Right. So we were there. I ran into you, and I wasn't going to say anything. I was just going to say, hey, you're doing great. We're having a good time. Thanks for doing it. Because it was lunchtime. You were probably trying to get a sandwich or something.
Oh, I was just walking. I like
Yeah.
walking to think.
Yeah.
And so it was just, it's tough. It's not tough because everybody has to prepare.
Right.
Everybody's doing a lot of hard work. But the day is very long. And so, just some
Yeah.
behind the scenes on that. I had not been behind the scenes, been to TEDx a ton, but
Right.
it's it's the coolest thing in the backstage because you are all these people that you've seen practice. You're not a speaker. You're not getting recorded. You're
Right.
introducing. Your job is to make them look good. It's kind of like government's job is we're never the picture.
Yeah.
We're always the picture frame that allow
Right.
us to all kind of pursue our own dreams and have, great things happen. Government allows a
Right.
lot of that to happen in civil society, but you would be in the back in the day of all of these folks, they would have they're so nervous.
Right.
I used to be a competitive rower, and I knew that feeling of right before you're in the starting blocks. It's so lonely, and people are coming up and saying, "Yeah, you're gonna do this. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
great." And it's you're so nervous. You're about to go execute on whatever it is, and then you
Right.
execute, and then you're over the moon because you crushed it, and
Yeah.
everybody crushed it. Even the folks that I'm they might not crush it.
Right.
They totally crushed it,
Yeah.
and it was awesome. And after that, you're excited. It was just a very long day because you never got to have you
Right.
were there at the as you never had the lows, but you never got the highs, and you
Yeah.
always had this constant kind of feeling of I have to be
Right.
a presentable human being so that I don't F this up for everybody else
Yeah.
that's out there. And
Yeah.
so it was a long day. So when I caught you, I was happy to talk about anything else besides TEDx, because I was just walking to clear my head. And
Yeah.
it was a great day though.
No, it was good. It was. I mean, I'm actually going to have the two women who organize it. They're going to come on the show as
yeah.
well.
Karen and Anna.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah,
oh, they're
yeah.
great. Yeah, that's awesome idea.
But anyway, we are here because of my beloved mother, who couldn't help herself mentioning to you.
She had a pod.
You said my son has a podcast.
It's the new. I got an app. You should download the app. You
Yeah.
know, but yeah, that's
Exactly.
great, man. Listen, everybody, moms are great, and they, and that I now see it as a dad to a 7-year-old and
Sure.
a 3-year-old that you just they want you to be successful.
You
and,
can't help it. Yeah.
Just be happy and
Right.
doing what you do is be happy.
Yeah. No, I'm glad.
And what was your mother's name again for the viewers? at home?
Amory.
Amory.
Yeah.
All right, Amory. Thank you for getting Andy to do this for me. This is appreciated.
That's gonna make her so happy. You have no idea. But you are actually a great candidate for this show, right? Because the whole idea is, we're inundated with negativity, cynicism, all this stuff,
Sure.
and there isn't really a natural counter incentive to be aware of. Hey, what are all the good things going on? My focus is that, but just on New Hampshire.
That's great.
That's where I'm from.
I think it's tough. I think news media has figured out that our brains are trained to kind of clue in on negativity,
Right.
and we are in the first kind of algorithm, election cycle,
Right.
and it's just just doom scrolling,
Yeah.
and I think that I feel. It's a difficult thing, I think, to grow. I was lucky enough to grow up without
Yeah.
social media. Before I came into college, and that's when the Facebook happened.
Yeah.
And I'm just thinking if it had been earlier, how hard that would have been, because you see all these negative things throughout the
Right.
world, and there's no you have no agency
Right.
in it, and you feel helpless.
Yeah.
I think, and a lot of like the next generation coming up is like, how do I navigate a world that has so much going on in it that I don't feel as though I can actually participate in an effective way to change? And so
Yeah.
I think keeping it positive, but then like keeping it local. Like there's
Right.
always something you can do.
Yeah.
Like literally every day you can go do something,
Right.
like to help your fellow human being.
Yeah.
And that's a positive thing. And,
Yeah.
if, and it's contagious, I feel like it's a good thing to feel, useful to folks.
Yeah. I love everything you just said. You are echoing the exact message that we want to broadcast to people. It's
All right, good.
perfect.
I'm not like, like on the New Hampshire Badness podcast. I'm not
No.
going to say the exact opposite.
That's
here,
right.
so.
And maybe if this goes real well after 500 episodes, everyone will be
man.
too happy, and then we'll need to do
Yeah,
a,
we'll backtrack a little bit. All right.
a granite awfulness podcast. But I would love to hear. So this is a New Hampshire-oriented podcast. I always want to start out with people. I know a little of your story, but could you just share with everyone, like, tell me about your relationship to the state?
Oh, sure.
You know?
I mean, I guess I grew up here in Portsmouth.
Yeah.
So lucky enough, to be born in New Hampshire. And I think, I'm always jealous of folks that move here because, I like to think that, I'm smart enough at least to come back after college or,
Right.
or stay. But, it's still like somewhat just in my blood to like this place. And so I'm always jealous when people are, they choose it, just they look at all the states and like, oh, New Hampshire.
Yeah.
But I was super fortunate to go to Phillips Exeter in high school, and I fell in love with this thing called rowing there.
Yeah.
My advisor told my parents I was in the half of the class that made the top half possible, but
Right.
Learned how to row and got to travel. Went to Cal,
Oh, wow.
Cal Berkeley.
Yeah.
Got to row, and rowing was a really interesting sport just in that I was kind of taller later, and my brothers had played football and basketball and very good at it. I was like a kid named Deglin with an eye patch that wasn't tall until I was like way older.
Right.
And so being able to kind of dedicate a lot of time to that, I was able to travel the world on the U.S. team, rowing in different countries as far away as New Zealand,
Yeah.
and as close as Canada. And I just learned really how to do that on the senior level in Durham Boat Company, which is right down in, on the way to Newmarket from
Yeah.
Durham.
Oh, yeah, I know where it is.
And just real great passion and got to learn. And I got to, I was in New York at a training, or I was in Princeton, New Jersey, living on because the rowers, like, this is like the mayor thing. Like, we would, the joke was like, oh, you get paid for that? Oh, yeah.
Right.
Hundreds of dollars a year.
Yeah, okay.
So we was living, doing odd jobs. I had a job, training algorithms, I guess. That's how I put it on the website, or I put it on the resume. But it was
Right.
basically like saying this was a good search result, query or not. Worked at Home Depot for a little bit, and basically was living on a futon when I met my wife in New York, and
Yeah.
we fell in love, and we traveled out. There was another training center in Oklahoma.
Must have been some futon.
It was actually an air mattress, and she was like, "This is where you live
Yeah.
with like 4 other dudes. That's cool, I
Yeah.
guess." I had no I had basically had $100 in my bank account when I met her in New York, and I drained all of that
Right.
that night. So
That's good.
yeah,
A good investment, though.
Yeah,
it
good.
seems like.
Listen,
Yeah.
best investment I've ever made.
Right.
But then, so we were out in California, came back. And then, so left rowing, moved to New York for kind of her work, and then I worked in tech, and so I was able to go out and do some work out there, open an office, and she got sick, and so she had autoimmune, and she still does, but it's like very managed, and so
Yeah.
she couldn't work, and found everything that was, that goes on the Awfulness podcast in terms of the healthcare system,
Yeah.
and just trying to navigate that, and
Right.
we moved back. Ahead of schedule to after getting married and was living in my aunt's winter rental, and so that lucky in a way because we would not have been able to afford if we had waited 3 more years
Right.
to move. But ended up finding a place actually across the street from where my dad grew up in Portsmouth, and got a little involved in politics. I actually ran against Chris Pappas for Congress, and I felt like people should know how the internet makes money, like in in Congress. But then obviously didn't win that. And when Portsmouth was kind of coming apart at the seams over a building downtown, felt like I had a voice in that should be a little bit more moderate, just in terms of like, let's not tear each other apart. And was able to get a seat on the council, and really enjoyed it. Like, it was just, I don't know, I think like national politics, I'm sure, is a lot of fun. In its own way, but when you get to see the people, there's downsides that local government's very populist, but you get to see the people you're trying to help on a daily basis, and it's a place that you love. And so I was lucky enough to be elected mayor, and then ran again, and was lucky enough to get reelected.
They had you back.
Yeah, I mean, that's probably the it's tough. I would say the way that we do mayor here in Portsmouth is tough in that it's just the top vote getter. So like, even if like it's just like, okay, like I liked being on the council. Like, I didn't know if I liked, all of the time commitments that being mayor was. So, and I really enjoyed being on the council. But also, like, it's like, you can't really run for mayor. And like, I would have been fine. My 7-year-old would have been devastated. She's like, it's like Paw Patrol. There's a good mayor and a bad mayor.
She's all in on the mayor identity.
Yeah, she's like, it's to a little kid. It's like, it's like you're talking to Joe Biden like all the time. Like, it's that's not kind of how it works. I mean, he did come. She's like, well, he came to Portsmouth.
She doesn't know that,
But like, it's like, it's just, New Hampshire's a political state. But there's, it's not a. It's not typical. It's not like, president then just right underneath the mayor.
Right.
But
there's a couple rungs.
There's a couple rungs there. Yeah.
Man. So what is being mayor, right? Like, you clearly had some experience in city government before, entering this office. Is it what you expected it would be, or like what do you wish you knew going in, I guess? Like,
I had no so it was way busier than I thought it was going to be. Being on the council was certainly busy, and we went through COVID, and that was a lot of hard work. Just getting through COVID on the council. I think the mayor, it's not like there's so little that is actually required. Like, it's I don't want to let your readers down or your listeners down, but it's like a figurehead position in so many ways. It's like what you do with the soft power that matters. And so like, it's just it was interesting. I found that it was much more fun than I thought. Just if you're a curious person, there's a ton of problems. And government, and if you believe in government, like if your goal isn't to like, and I get sometimes that people get disappointed and disillusioned with government. I think like you can't have any institution that's around for as long as, our democracy has been, and not be disillusioned with it. But if you believe in government as like, okay, like it beats the alternatives, then like, how are we going to create better government? And, so like, if you believe in government, you got to work on making it better, because it deserves that. It doesn't exist because it has to. We all make a choice to live under rules, and sometimes those rules seem ridiculous, and they are. And I guess like my I hadn't really thought about it, but my North Star in terms of like decisions is like, does this seem reasonable? Like, and like, how do you make things reasonable? And that's been just a lot of fun in terms of like, if somebody calls in with a problem, like I can't change how zoning works like immediately. Like, we can work on it, but also like sometimes there's edge cases where like, as mayor, I can ask, like, why did we interpret it that way? It's like, oh, I don't know, it's just we've done it that way. Well, why? Why do we do it that way? Why don't we have, like, tie goes to the runner? Like, why does it not work out easier for the homeowner that's trying to get that ADU or, like, and so, like, then working through those, those incremental things to add more units of housing, or just make, parking requirements less, or, restaurant, outdoor dining easier, all of those things, just like you can improve that. And it's satisfying when it happens.
Yeah, well, it's what you would want to see in a government, I guess, right? That it can take feedback, it can iterate, it can evolve, because it is a kind of weird, like you've touched on this a little bit. it's so interesting and fun to think of like, what is a democracy supposed to be? What is it, right? And like, it's really supposed to be just people getting together, talking about stuff.
Sure. Yeah, I
you know,
think like,
deciding.
this is probably deeper than it probably should get, but like I think people look at politics in such a it takes on like almost like a religious tone for folks. You know,
Yeah.
if they're a Democrat or a Republican.
Right.
All those things, are like, the readers aren't confused. Like, I'm a Democrat. I believe that like collectively, like
Yeah,
there's positive
that's your
things.
party, right,
That's the
yeah,
party, but it's
yeah.
not like on the local level. It doesn't ever come up. There's plenty
Right.
of Democrats that are against affordable housing measures.
Right.
Like just
Yeah.
because it's in their backyard.
Yeah.
And so like there's not like it doesn't track. And so like I think the most fun about this is that you get to disagree with different people on a different day.
Yeah.
And like it's not always like us versus them, and
Right.
like nobody listens in that environment, and
Yeah.
that can be just like that would be like pound your head into a wall, frustrating.
Right.
If like any argument you made, it was just like, no, we're not going to do it. And you see that a little bit on like the state level, like
Yeah.
which is really frustrating. We were trying to get through like a we'll call it. I'll use the nomenclature of the folks that are opposed to it, like a pillow tax. Like,
Right.
I don't on the hotels. Like,
Yeah.
like nobody coming up from Boston or New York or wherever is going to care about $1 on a room per night.
Right.
Just not going to happen. It's
Yeah.
not like the room rents here are crazy.
Yeah.
They're not going to care about $1, but it would mean significant amount of money coming in. And the latest attempt was to say, hey, let's put this in like for police and fire, the things that are actually going up when you have all these other people
Right.
come into your town. And that got, killed because it was like, we don't want any more taxes. Okay, I get it. But
Right.
like we'd like our taxes to be lower
Yeah.
in like property tax. Like, so how are we going to do that if we just have these like
Right.
ideological like divisions that like can never be changed? And that's the frustrating thing, I think,
Right.
is just like when you see that creep in. But on the local level, I mean, it's fun disagreeing with different people at different times.
Yeah.
And it's fun to agree with people on different things, like, and just trying to figure out how to do that and compromise. And
Right.
we had like a solar panel. I don't know how like quickly these get out if this beats the news, but last night we had a solar panel debate, and half of them were like, it was like historic preservation.
Oh,
or
I've heard of this issue.
Yeah, so like we had it, and then we figured out, okay, like it was kind of ingenious. One of the counselors was like, okay, we put it to the HDC, the Historic District Commission, and the Planning Board, and we came back with the recommendations. And okay, these recommendations are kind of obtuse, and they still need to go before the HDC. Well, one of the counselors, Counselor Dunn, was like, hey, I'll take all these recommendations. They seem like a good step forward, but why don't, instead of it going to the HDC, if they meet these things, they don't actually have to have a meeting.
Right.
No meeting at all. They just
Yeah.
get them by right.
Yeah.
And that was a change we made. It upset some of the people that were into preservation. It upset some people that wanted to just be like, no review at all. But with both of those sides upset, it's like, okay, we probably got something here. If everybody's upset about this,
It's a
then
sign of a good
that's-
compromise,
well,
right? Yeah.
we'll move it. Move it forward. And so that required folks not to be super ideological. It required folks to be like, yeah, this is something that is improving the system as it has.
Yeah.
It's not going to solve everything, but nothing we were going to do was going to solve everything, unless it was just like some ideological stance that you were going to feel good about. And I think
Right.
sometimes we take the cheap ideological wins that we get
Yeah.
and feel like that's actually feeling good,
Right.
when we know that there's no way in hell that's ever going to pass muster with everybody, or at least the
Right.
majority of people.
Yeah.
And that's where I think like just working on like long-term solutions. We also passed a skip the stuff policy where like restaurants are now going to be educated on like, don't actually put forth like the utensils in your bag.
Sure.
And like, Uber Eats has an option for you to unclick that. And if you
Right.
sign up for that, like you're going to get a sticker from the city that says this is part of the skip the stuff. So
Yeah.
people that are watching this stuff will know that you're a restaurant that is trying to reduce the amount of
waste.
post-consumables in our waste stream. So that's positive.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of things out
Yeah.
there. And yeah, I could talk forever about the politics, but I think, your question is like, do I enjoy it? And I enjoy it, so much. And there's part of it's like, from a next generation standpoint, but part of it's selfish, just being able to
Yeah.
learn about really interesting things.
Right. There is this real trend, right, for people, kind of regardless of where they are in like the political influence rung, to want to nationalize every issue, right? To kind of fall into
Certainly.
the standard partisan battle lines on, whatever it is. And, it's nice to hear that, yeah, sometimes it happens, but a fair amount of your role, it sounds like, is trying to remind people this isn't DC, this is Portsmouth, New Hampshire.
Sure.
Pushing back against that.
Yeah, well, it's also like, I think it's it usually comes down to trust. And I believe that if everybody had a conversation, like you mentioned Chris earlier,
Right.
if everybody had a conversation, they'd be like, okay, this guy's a reasonable guy.
Yeah, he's a normal person
It's a human.
trying to do good, yeah.
It's a human. It's not a robot or
Right.
an alien.
Yeah.
And so I think that on the local level, we get the benefit of talking to a lot of folks.
Yeah.
And the thing that, it's weird with like social media, and I'm not like putting it all on social media. Like
Yeah.
I think like it's, it's phones, it's attention. It's just like the amount of, you would think with all the ways to communicate, people would feel heard.
Yeah.
But they don't. It's kind of the opposite. Like
Yeah.
they don't feel as though they're being listened to because there's so many other voices out there drowning them out. And when you're on the local level and you have an issue, you can come into this office. You can reach out to any one of the counselors. You can reach out to the city manager. There's a way to feel heard about a problem.
Yeah.
Now, there's no way we're solving everybody's problems.
Yeah.
And I think that was like going back to learnings. I have become slightly more guarded in terms of we're going to fix that right away.
Sure.
It's like we're storming City
That's
Hall.
what
It's
they
like-
wanna hear,
It's
yeah.
like, and so being able to trust that people can live in a complicated world where they don't get everything they want as long as you spend the time to listen to them.
Right.
And that's what I found has been, I've been more just effective in terms of being like, okay, I understand this is, where you're coming from. I don't understand all the facts.
Yeah.
I'm going to try to go get, because people do have their perception of the
Right.
reality, and we all live in that. I do as well.
Yeah.
So I'm going to try to go get more facts on this. And then trying to help people hear, each other, and then be heard, I think is the primary job of anybody in politics. It has to be around like communication, and it has to be about listening. I'm a representative. Like
Yeah.
I have opinions
Right.
all the time. Like there's a voice in my head that says, let them know, D.
Yeah,
Let them
right.
know how you feel
Yeah.
right now. And I'm like, yeah, is this going to be super productive to let them know exactly
Right.
all of the feelings that I have on this when I don't think that I am necessarily speaking for
Yeah.
the majority. There's times when I have to be courageous and speak out against, there are plenty of times where it's not common sense. Like common sense doesn't apply, and I know that sounds ridiculous. I know that there's
Yeah.
a feeling like it could be counterintuitive.
Right.
Like everybody wants more stop signs, everywhere.
Right.
But the data shows when you put stop signs literally everywhere,
Yeah.
you are going to cause more accidents because people start ignoring them. Like they
Right.
just ignore them. They start rolling through because
Yeah.
they're like, oh, there's a stop sign here, and a stop sign here, and a stop sign here. But pedestrians don't. And sometimes they'll be crossing expecting somebody to stop, and it's not. So it's counterintuitive. And so
Right.
there's some times with that, but there's other times it's just like, listen, we're digging in, guys. We can't get, government can't be a bunker. Like, we
Yeah.
can't be feeling as though everybody's yelling at us. They have a right to petition their government.
Right.
And it's our duty to listen to that, smile, say thank you.
Right.
And, and either take their advice or not take their advice. But you have to be respectful
Yeah.
about all of those things. And that's the thing that has always been, it's fun, especially when somebody, again, I think, I learned everything I need to know about politics in a third grade with an eye patch named Deglin. It's just there's not a thing that you can say to me
That's it.
that's going to be, something that I'll be like, okay, I'm going to try to take that comment for the positive that I'm going to see in that comment. And
Right.
if it's you having a bad day, that's you having a bad day. And I
Yeah.
can't really help that. And the amount of times people have been like, hey, I wasn't at my best,
Sure.
and I'm like, yeah, I totally get that. It's super frustrating, to
Right.
see this project go through, and to know that other property rights exist outside of yours, and that
Yeah.
we have to work collaboratively to improve the zoning
Right.
to make this. Yeah, I would love to have more affordable housing than we have hotels.
Right.
How are we going to do that? Collectively coming together and making zoning changes that allow for that.
Yeah.
That's like a zoning change. It's not like a snap your finger and it happens.
Right.
It's literally people's property, and you're
Right.
changing what they can do with it.
Yeah.
People in New Hampshire tend to have opinions on
Right.
that. The live free or die state is
Yeah.
going to be, it's going to be opinionated. So that's where all of the things kind of have to come together. Every day is different.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of like I heard someone phrase it this way once, that there's a difference between utopia, right? We all know what utopia is. It's the perfect fantasy land that we're never going to get to, and then there's something else that people call protopia, and protopia is not utopia, but it's better than what we have today.
Yeah.
Right? And like orienting towards that is pretty doable. You know?
It's I was lucky enough to have a dad that was a little bit older, and he passed away a couple years ago. But the perspective that he had as a kid that grew up, born in Portsmouth, 1937, saw the Navy Yard build all the submarines, saw the Pease Air Force Command come in, revitalize, saw all of that crash, and in terms of not being a super desirable place, saw changes that they made,
right.
and over 80 years, Portsmouth became something that was unrecognizable in terms of the kid that grew up in the creek, to see what happens. And I think there's always a frustration in the immediacy of change, but I went to school at New Franklin Elementary. It was, and it's not all great in terms of education, because the way education improves in New Hampshire is sometimes just by gentrifying communities, and we were an example of that.
Right.
But I went to New Franklin, and it was the fourth best school out of 3 elementary schools. Now it's one of the best in the state. There's a lot that has changed in a positive way, when people, hold on to values, and they've always invested in education here in Portsmouth. And so there are things that can change over a long period of time.
Yeah.
It's just not always on the timeline that people have, but and just in general, we got AC, we have air conditioning, this is climate controlled in here,
right. It's pretty good, actually.
It's it's tough. There, I don't know, some comedian. There's planes that fly the entire, continent of the United States in a matter of hours, and you're on your phone complaining that there's no Wi-Fi.
Right.
It's difficult to, I think it's a nature of humanity to always want more,
right.
but you should, it's good to be grateful, and there's a lot to be grateful, especially in our state. We got so
right.
many awesome things, the beach, the mountains.
Yeah.
There's just nothing we don't have, except maybe housing.
Right.
That's the one thing.
If we get that, we're set. Yeah. Well, the kind of fun conceit of this podcast, right, is that, I'm from New Hampshire. I've lived here forever, just like you, and people who aren't from here, and I kind of want, if you have a story opinion about this, but we'll put it this way. I was once in California when I was a kid, and I was 16 with my high school band, and I was talking to the other kids about, what state are you from, blah, 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 and they all said, where about you, Andy? I'm from New Hampshire. And they say, what state is that in?
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Oh, yeah.
So there's this kind of attitude, externally, that maybe they have a vague awareness that we have some political significance. Otherwise, people think that New Hampshire's kind of this podunk backwater place, but
sure.
We know it's actually quite incredible in many ways. It's really not
it's
that.
I mean, I'm biased. I think it's the best state in
the
country.
Too. We'll state that right off the bat.
But in going to California, the same, I went to school at Cal, and people are like, where's New Hampshire?
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, I guess it's the East Coast. They're like, yeah. Is it next to D.C. or New York? I'm like, no, there's another place called New England. Oh, okay. And, it's just I don't know, I think everybody in New Hampshire knows every other state.
Right.
Yeah. But it's it's kind of a secret, and, that secret got out after COVID.
Right.
A lot of people recognize, oh, wait, there's an international airport. There's
right.
a couple of them. I can work here and take my income that I was previously,
right.
duking it out in the streets of New York, and I can move up here, and I can afford to live up here. My kids have a great life.
Right.
I think we saw a lot of growing pains in that time period, just understanding, and it's a great thing when people are excited about your state.
Right.
Fantastic. I love it, and I always welcome more people here. There's 2 things that I hope that they bring with them. a sense of community. A lot of times we have an older population that
Yeah.
moves to Portsmouth, and if they feel as though like they don't have to give back because they're retired and they don't have to do those things, like, now I'm not saying that like that's everybody can choose their own
Right.
path in life. I'm saying it's going to be less rewarding if you're not like actively giving back. It's the best way to meet people. It's the
Yeah.
best way to feel good about yourself, and it's fun. That's how you get insider status. It's just
Right.
offering to help.
Yeah.
Whether it's a nonprofit, whether it's a board or commission, just helping. Two, I think that New Hampshire's unique in that we don't have a huge amount of revenue streams that come in. We are very self-reliant and self-sufficient, and it's great to come here from a state that maybe you had a tax burden that you didn't love.
Yeah.
But you can't necessarily come here and expect to change everything that we have about the state. Like, you can't just make it your state.
Mass it up.
Yeah, and like my wife loves that.
Yeah.
I think it's a little bit. Like, I think there are bigger issues, at play than slogans. But I think the belief that we have something that's special, and it requires, like, I guess from the positive, I take that slogan as like there's a shared responsibility that we all have, and we have to make sure that we all are pulling on that rope together, and that we're improving
Yeah.
like the state and making it better than we found it in ways that like align to the things that we all love.
Yeah.
I really hope that like when people come here, it's the natural beauty, sure, but then like it's the way of life where neighbors are, there's not I remember like going out to California and people are like, oh man, these people are smiling, they're my best friends. They're gonna help me move into this apartment. It's like,
Yeah.
no, it's a little bit more superficial
Right.
out there. And
Yeah.
here, like, your friends because they're the people that talk to you.
Right. Or
but-
help you move. Right.
Yeah, or help you move.
Yeah.
And so like that's where there's not so many times like I'll just like in our neighborhood, a friend of mine who married a gal that I went to school with. He's like, man, this is like, it's crazy that I found this girl in this place. Like, who has it better than us? And it's tough to when you're drinking a beer in your friend's backyard and there's a fence and you literally know your kid, if they're going to get in trouble, it's going to be within this fenced area.
Yeah.
And and you can just relax and just kind of like hang. Like, that's what we all want.
Right.
On some level. And so it's a really great place.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I definitely feel spoiled. I feel like I get the best of both, right? I live in Tamworth, New Hampshire, actually.
Love it. Yeah, you got socialized medicine up there.
Yeah, you know about that. I'm going to have them on too eventually. But I work, my office for work is down here, so I'm here
Oh,
a
wow.
couple times a week.
That's great.
And it's a fun, Route 16 is beautiful.
It's the best drive in the
It
world.
really is,
And like,
yeah.
and you feel like, when you get to Shikora and you see that, when
Yeah,
you just
that's
come,
it.
when you come over that bend, you're just like, oh my God.
I'm here.
And I think the most fun I had, and why I'm still happy I ran for Congress, is that you get to see all of New Hampshire.
Yeah.
Or at least you get to see half of the state. And you get to see all of this district, and you realize, wow, then there's a lot going on here, and there's just so much natural beauty. Like my grandmother on my mom's side, they all lived in Stratford County.
Yeah.
So like just a little bit up, and like there's nothing like being in the woods on a hot day and just that smell of the woods, like when in the shade, they can, and it's just we're so lucky that that's so close by. And 16, you're coming up, you see the railway, like as you make the turn, as you get out of Durham. It's just like there's so many iconic places that are just it's fantastic.
Yeah.
Shikora is great. That fence, beautiful fence. They fixed it.
Yeah, you know exactly what I'm talking about. I was gonna say, like the moment where you first see
Yeah.
Chikora, right? That's it. It's funny. John Kipper, he's a friend of mine. I went to his restaurant for he's running for governor.
He's running for governor. Yeah,
And,
talking about housing, doing a good job.
Yeah, no, I think he's doing wonderful. And I saw one of his things. He's crisscrossing the state, like you're saying, when people run. One of his goals, I don't think it's like formal, but he like says it, is he'll try and find all the swimming holes. Like if he'll go speak in Manchester, he'll be like, all right, where's the good swimming hole around here,
Yeah.
right?
It's
a fun
it's
quirk.
funny how like Reddit and like New Hampshire like channel on Reddit like doesn't
Yeah.
like always, sometimes they downvote the good ones just
Right.
to keep them out. But like,
Yeah.
yeah, there's swimming holes. There's nothing like it in terms of like just a like a waterfall,
Right.
you know, and that's a good goal. You got to have goals when you're campaigning, other
Right.
than winning.
Yeah.
Just in terms of like, you know, getting the message out, but also just like it's a fun thing to do. I saw John, you know, he was quote unquote campaigning at the Farm AQ, and it was a great event where a lot of local restaurants come to raise money for local kind of farm to table initiatives. And
Yeah.
give back to people that are doing good, and great organization. David Vargas, Evan Mallet run that. Coming up, some of the restaurateurs here just do a great job. Saw him just enjoying, you know, some of the fare there and having, you know, good conversations. But,
Yeah. It kind of feels like how it's supposed to be, right? Listen, this show very much, I'll just come out and say it, is an absolute revolt against kind of like the chronic default mode of cynicism that I feel like has taken hold.
Sure.
A lot of places and certainly generationally, like for people my age, and I'm 29, right? And you know, there's this real difference culturally in how we think of like a public servant and a politician.
Sure, yeah.
right?
Politician's the most hated word
Yeah.
ever. Like I bristle at it. It's like a way to, you know, I used to say, you know, I push back on like even the name, but then I'm like, well, like if I'm doing all this work and people are, you know, I gotta like somebody's got to start carrying the bag for politicians that like, you know,
Yeah.
do it because they enjoy
Yeah.
service. But like I would agree with like, you know, our current governor being like, it's not like a lifetime appointment. you know?
Right.
It's like it's something that you want people with new, you know, ideas
Yeah.
and a perspective, and it can't be, you know, it can't be a lifer. In
Right.
it. Like it's got to be something like it's a service, and like it's you know, and
You step in, you step out.
yeah, and it feels good. Like I think like earnesty is like something that is lost now. Like to be earnest about like just like the work and just saying
Yeah.
like this is something, you know, it's the opposite of cynicism, that you're doing the work because you enjoy the work. And I get that like, you know, that's probably not how somebody views a person that ran for Congress whose dad was Democratic nominee, that he's doing this just because
Sure.
he enjoys it. And
Yeah.
like you have to, in politics, you have to know how other people perceive you, just because that's, you know, the name of the game, because you can't be kind of aloof on that. But
Yeah.
you know, there's what people think and then like what you actually do. And I tell you, you know, one of my favorite emails that I got was like somebody would be like, you know what, like after 5 years, I'm starting to think that like you're not just doing this for yourself. I was just like, my wife would kill you if she read that email.
Right.
But, you know, because there's a lot of nights away and
Yeah.
sacrifices. But I always try to tell myself that I am doing this job for Portsmouth. Certainly,
Right.
love it. But I'm also kind of trying to set, like, it's a great way to set an example for my kids
Yeah.
of like, I don't know. I just wish that, and I understand that people don't feel it makes a difference. I try to urge them to say that it does, and it can and it does. But if you want a better world, you got to work on making a better world.
Right.
And there's so many actions that you can take on the local level. Like you could come to a meeting every month or every, you know, other week and say, hey, I'm just here at public comment because I want to remind the council that stands before me that I voted for you because I wanted you to make zoning changes so that the city can be more affordable. Thank
Right.
you. You could carve that out, and I guarantee you that would leave an
impression, yeah.
impression. And I think sometimes people rate how visible it is for other people, instead of just being like, you know what, this is something that I feel like I am passionate about. Like public comment, like everybody listens. Even the people that I'm like, man, this person has not said one thing that I agree with in the last 10 meetings.
Yeah.
You're still open. Your ears are open, listening to that person, because you
Right.
want to find a commonality with with humans. And so there's always an opportunity. And so just like, you know, for the listeners out there, like show up and like, it's like, I'll say it's like this. It's like social media in this way. You know, we've all seen like that person that's like, and I'm like, Twitter, I've just kind of given up on it just because like, just the amount of effort that like the consistency that it requires. But like social media is like, you build a following when you're consistent. Yeah. And you do something over and over again. And like, if you come to public comment and speak, you know, like we try to get people involved in the budget because I know that if more people are involved, more people will want things and we'll have a better conversation on things that we actually need. And so that's, you know, I'm just, you know, any listener out there, you know, reach out to just, you should know who represents you. Yeah. And tell them who you are and what you value. Right. They will love to hear that. 100%. And I would start on the local level because not to say anything negative about the State House, there's just a lot that's going on there. There's a lot and there's a lot of people. Yeah. You know, just talk to your alderman, talk to your town council, talk to your city council and say, hey, I'm here and these are my, you know, this is my list of demands. Right. You know, and just like, so great.
Like articles of grievance.
Yeah. But that's, you know, that's I would say, and I know I'm talking too much here, but like, I would say every time somebody comes in with a grievance, I'm like, oh man, time to, you know, what's a hug your haters.
Put my empathy cap on, right?
And just like, okay, gonna listen, gonna hear this person. And then like, that's an opportunity to say, hey, this person I was listened to. And then like it takes that sometimes because the trust that we have in institutions about zero. Right. And the trust that we have in each other approaching zero. Right. And so you add like, you know, institution with our neighbors, it's like, okay, I just don't have the time for that. And I'm trying to say like to your folks, it's like, you know, hope is something that I know the folks that think like hope is not a strategy, but hope is different than belief. Yeah. Like a belief is something without facts. Right. Hope is because you got a plan and you're going to see through that plan. And I'm just, for the listeners, I would say like, be hopeful, you know, create a plan and put hope around that plan because there's an opportunity to improve the life that you live. You don't have to be a crazy person to come to City Hall. Right. Like, in fact, we'd love it if you're not. And, just like come and just say like, hey, I'm a normal person. You're supposed to represent me. Right. Why are you talking, you know, for 2 hours about this? Just move off of this and get onto some important topics. Yeah. And then, you know, get educated, learn all the nuances and, you know, be a citizen. It's always going to be the highest office in the land is that of citizen. We just need, you know, or else we get the government we deserve if the citizens aren't doing their job.
I think you hit on something really important, right? Is how do you, the institution fundamentally is an inhuman thing, right? Like it's not a human being. It's a building. It's an office. It's not something, right? It's a title. Yeah. But you know, it seems like you put a lot of effort into trying to avoid the office dehumanizing you, right, to other people. Yeah.
So like it's a reasons I like the office, just in like in terms of like I think if I was like if somebody was, you know, yelling at me for me being a bad dad, I would take it really personally. Right. And so like, I'm lucky that like, you know, you get a title, city councilor, you get a title of mayor, assistant mayor, and you can say, listen, like these, like the folks that are angry at the office. Right. But I'm a human that lives in this office, and so like, what am I going to do about it? Yeah. And so there's always like, it's you know, it cuts both ways, but if you forget, like, I think like politicians or civil servants or however we're going to phrase it so people like don't tune out on it, they need to be, you can't have the scar tissue. Like you gotta be, you know, like we built this skate park and it was probably the coolest thing in Portsmouth's done in a really long time. And it happened because of COVID. And these kids, they were working down at Esther's Marina. And for the local politics, folks that are listening to this understand local politics know that me and Esther don't agree about everything under the sun. But we both agreed on this skate park. We agree about a lot of things like ADUs and things like that, but we don't agree about everything. Yeah. But They're working down there, and she shepherded this project, and it was in COVID, and it wasn't following the process, like in terms of like we have this capital improvement plan, you're supposed to go in there, and there's reasons to do that.
Yeah.
Certainly. But this was COVID, and this was an opportunity for some young men to come together and create a really awesome skate park, which I encourage everybody to go check out if you skate. And in that process, I met a guy named Dave Cosgrove, and he said, Deg, like the reason I really like skating is that, it gave me a lot of confidence because, I was never good enough to land the trick at first, and I had to get the confidence to get hurt to go and do that. And I think that sometimes in life and certainly in politics, we guard ourselves so much against like the opportunity of, any emotional damage that we might have. It's a really tough place to be if you're trying to lead people.
Right.
And like the only thing about leadership that requires it's like a ability to be vulnerable to the people that you're leading, and also to be willing to put yourself in harm's way. And if you don't do that, I think people perceive that, and they just
Right.
they just don't trust you,
Right.
and they don't let you do anything. But like, it's a responsibility of anybody that's entrusted with making decisions on behalf of other people that like you have to be able to hear the negative feedbacks on those decisions that you make, not take that super personally, know that they have the right to do that,
Right.
and not put a guard up so that you don't listen to people in the future.
Yeah.
Like and we are in a place where literally people, whether algorithmically or not, just listen to people that they want to listen to.
Right.
And, I don't know if we have a shared view of the world as Americans now. Like we have like, New Hampshire's great. We have a really great country too. Like there's so many awesome things
Right.
in this country and opportunities that we have in this country that other people, you come to you should do a podcast with the folks that lead the naturalization ceremony at Strawberry Bank. It is the coolest day that you will ever spend on the 4th of July is down there watching. And this was 99 people from 41 countries that worked their butts off to become
Right.
Americans. And it is probably the most patriotic that you will ever feel. You got Republicans, you got Democrats. It's basically like coming to church and realizing that, yes, these are the words that we try to live up to.
Yeah.
And yes, there's a rights that you get when you're an American. And that little blue book that'll let you travel around the world and have the U.S. military come get you out if you get in trouble.
Right.
Like, that's an amazing thing. But there's also responsibilities. And part of those responsibilities is staying informed.
Yeah.
If you're going to vote, to be informed. And not saying like, you're not informed because you're voting for this guy.
Right.
If you're informed and you're voting for this guy, good on you. Like,
Right.
get out there and do it.
Yeah, do it as intentionality, right?
It's just but it's a amazing day that reminds us all, like, just what we are lucky to have. And there's just, I don't know, so I'm really happy your podcast is trying to highlight some of those things. Definitely get to the naturalization ceremony, talk to, one of the judges that presides over that.
Yeah.
Or like the clerks that run that. It's just an absolutely amazing day when you see all these people that, came in, sat down as, foreign nationals, permanent residents, what have you, came as like from 99 different places and all stood up to take the oath of allegiance as Americans.
Right.
Never feel better about being American than when you're there.
Yeah. I'd love to get them on. And it's actually funny you say that. I mean, just this morning, I do all my interviews in a block. So earlier this morning, I was interviewing a woman named Sarah Palermo. She's with an organization called New Hampshire Legal Aid.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
and she was telling me about, they were helping some refugees from Bhutan, and it took a little time for these people to understand that they were no longer in a place where might makes right is the absolute truth,
sure,
right? To help them understand, you have rights here. We can help you. We can interpret, you're afforded protections under the law. And that this, for these group of refugees, that was a relatively foreign concept to them, right?
I mean, I could talk forever. I always think it's weird when, I think sometimes not get flack, but I think America is the greatest country in the world because we're always trying to be better. We don't always live up to it, but we're always trying to be better. We're a country founded on words. Like
It's a big country.
it's a big country.
Yeah.
A lot of
Right.
a lot of crazy different parts
Right.
of it, and but like there was Ronald Reagan's farewell address. He paraphrased the letter that he got that basically said, "You can move to France and not be French. You can move to Germany and not become German. But
Right.
if you move to America, you can become an American." And like that's the that's the secret sauce. Like we steal
Yeah.
it all the time in terms of like Portsmouth used to be the state capital. We were founded 400 years ago, 401 now. On the banks of the Strawberry Bank, and we were a port city.
Right.
But we are the city of the open door, and that's the secret sauce. Because I know for a fact that we don't have all the answers about what the future is going to bring and what we need to bring to it. But I know that people coming to like be a part of this melting pot in Portsmouth do have those answers. And like
Yeah.
as long as you're open to maybe being wrong about something and having more people come in and create just mix it up a little bit, like that's a positive thing. That is our secret sauce. And there was always lots of talk about like diversity and things of that nature. The best example that I ever heard was talking about like how there was a problem at Google where they had like 10% of iPhone or Android videos uploading upside down to YouTube, and they couldn't figure it out. They hired more engineers, like couldn't find the bug. They hired a project manager, and she figured it out. And it wasn't, because she was a product manager. It wasn't because she was a woman. It was because she was left-handed, and that when she was holding up her videos to do like selfies,
Yeah.
like she was holding up with her left hand, and most people were holding up with their right hand,
Wow.
and it wasn't auto-rotating that way.
Yeah.
And it's just like, I mean, like, so when you have like more people from different perspectives,
Right.
you can solve bigger problems. It takes a little bit for everybody to get on the same page,
Right.
but the sounds are going to be, the music's going to be better when you got more instruments. And so, like, that's always like, and I know that it's, it's not always in vogue to talk about like how like we are a country of immigrants, like we are. And like
Yeah.
it is a fantastic, thing that we are, because that means that I don't have to eat like, boiled dinners. Like,
Yes.
like there's so many
Irish
great things.
cuisine's kind of rough. I'm
Yeah,
just gonna
it's
say
like
it,
I was growing up, like salt was a spice
Yeah.
in my house, and then like last
Right.
year I got to like judge an Italian cooking competition, and I'm
Yeah.
like, guys, I am really just gonna write down whatever this really good chef over here is
Yeah.
saying. 'Cause I have no basis for like what's good and what's not. Like,
Right.
when my wife came to my mom cooked dinner the first time, my wife asked my mom for salt, like table salt. It was a thing that's a staple down in the
Yeah.
South, not a staple where we were sodium. And so she goes and gets that little Morton's thing, and she turns it over and it turned back into a rock.
Right.
It returned to
Yeah.
its form of like 1,000 years ago, and just kind of like clumped out. But yeah, I think there's always a great opportunity for people, to bring a different perspective, and that's I think like, be open, like it's an amazing thing to be. To learn something new, and when you're right all the time, or you have like an ideological basis to view everything that you're ever going to face,
Right.
it's pretty disappointing.
Yeah.
Like you're not going to learn anything new, and like having young kids, like it's pretty amazing. Just like like you know nothing, but you will know so much, and so
Yeah.
like trying to like keep an open mind and like have
Yeah.
them work through those things and say. It's an interesting. What doesn't work is like you're wrong on this. It's
Yeah.
like that so far as a parent has worked as well as you'd expect.
Yeah. All right. Well, we're almost at time, but I got one more question
Okay.
I'd love to hear.
The hard one.
Oh, well, I don't know about hard. Yeah, I'm glad you touched on Portsmouth 400, right? Incredibly unique. We're here in this town. How many American towns can say that? Cities at any level, right? That they have a lineage
Sure.
going
yeah.
back 400 years. So do you think often about, legacy? Like what would you want the next person in your job to know? Are we ever going to get like the Colossus at Rhodes? Are we going to get the Daglin at Portsmouth? Like put a giant statue of you over one of the bridges?
No, well, to answer your
You don't think
question
we
of
could
like
do
what
it?
the next person should know,
Yeah.
would be that they have my full support. Like I think like whoever is lucky enough to sit in this weird role, again, it's like a figurehead.
Right.
No, I just it's a like my dad was really involved over a number of years, and so I think that's always been my, like, the person that I looked up to is like, it's not a measuring stick because there's just not, like, the times are different. Like Portsmouth went through so much change that I don't know if like we're going to see as much change now in the next 400 years as other parts. But if there's like ever somebody I do care about is that like my kids know that like my older daughter is still like really into like the mayor stuff and she likes it, and but she also like wonders where I am a lot of nights, and so I think that if they knew that it was worthwhile, like I think like I guess I'll sum it up this way, like I think everybody has to pay their rent on earth.
Yeah.
And I'm at the pearly gates or whatever comes after this, that I paid my rent on earth.
Yeah.
That like I think there's people use the word privilege like so incorrectly now.
Yeah.
Like I have privilege. I was born in America. I was born in Portsmouth.
Right.
It's Phillips Exeter. I want people to think that I used every advantage I could to make the world around me as good a place as I could make it.
Right.
And that I didn't spend enormous time trying to make the world just better for me, but try to make it as good for other people as it's been to me. And
Right.
I am incredibly grateful for how just unbelievably lucky I am to live here, to be speaking with you. And I don't spend a lot of time thinking about the future at all.
Yeah.
I used to,
Yeah.
and then I realized it was the biggest thief of any joy, because it was a comparison that was impossible.
Yeah.
It was a comparison of not my life to others, which is hard enough.
Right.
But my life to some future thing that will never work out like that. I had no
Yeah.
idea my wife was going to get sick right as like she was starting a job in New York, and she had to leave that job, and we didn't know if we were going to be able to pay rent, so we had to move out of the place that we had got
Right.
a lot of help just to get. Like, had no idea that was going to happen. We didn't even think we were going to have kids, and we had two beautiful daughters that are like the light of our lives. Like,
Yeah.
there's so many unknowns out there, so like it's never going to be worthwhile. And I would say, like, to those that are still in your 20s, there's so much that is out there that you just have to be open to letting happen, and just be ready for what those things are by like, wherever you're planted, grow, man. And
Yeah.
then like you'll find a lot of joy in that, and then you can be ready for other things if they come, and you can decide if that's something you still want to do, or you're totally happy doing what you're doing. And
Yeah.
that's being happy and realizing it is probably the toughest thing as a human.
Right. Well, that's a great note.
Yeah,
upon
man, I don't know.
which to
I'm
end.
just repurposing all my dad's quotes. He was a pretty prolific guy, and that's a picture of me.
Yeah, you got him up there.
When I was my younger
Wow.
daughter's age, and so
It's a great picture.
yeah, it looks like George W. Bush there.
I almost said that, and I was like, I don't know. Yeah,
Yeah.
I thought it was him for a moment, and I was like,
Yeah.
when did Bush
He-
hold you?
yeah.
This is the timing. I'm
Yeah,
not
it didn't
sure.
work out for long, but yeah, I don't know. Andy, it's been really great talking to you, man.
Yeah,
Really
likewise.
appreciate it.
Thank you for coming on.
I'll come back on the 100th episode. Or
Oh
the
yeah,
100th.
you should. That'd be great.
And I wish you all the success in the world. And it's not, I would say you're doing what your readers should be doing. You're getting some consistency out there, or your readers, your
Well, we do
listeners.
a newsletter too, a
All right.
Good News in New Hampshire
Okay, all right.
newsletter.
We'll
right?
get that,
Yeah.
and just, it's amazing when you commit to something and how much you can get out of it, because people have just such a distrust that they're ever going to see, like, oh, okay, what is this person actually doing?
Yeah.
Is this actually going to happen? But just
Right.
keep showing up, and people see that. I promise you they do. And I believe it that the highest office in the land is citizen. So
Yeah.
just get out there and be a citizen.
It's fun.
It's fun.
It's actually
It's
fun.
fun.
It's been fun talking to you. All right. Thanks, Daglin.
Thanks, Andy.
Hey there. Thanks for spending some time with us, and I hope you enjoyed the conversation. You can learn more about today's guest and how to get involved with or support their work in the show notes. If you'd like to suggest a guest for the show or have any story tips for our Good News in New Hampshire newsletter, shoot me a message at hello@granitegoodness.com. Music for this episode was provided by the band Sneaky Miles, who hail from Newmarket, New Hampshire. Until next time, I'm the creator of Granite Goodness and the host of the Granite Goodness podcast, Andy DeMeo. Thanks for listening.